today we're going to be discussing raspberry. So when I first moved here onto this property in central Maine, raspberry was the bane of my existence, especially wild raspberry like you see behind me here. And what I used to do is go around the property in early spring identifying all of the prickly raspberry bushes, and I would start to yank them up out of the ground, trying to eliminate every raspberry that I could find on the property. I'm glad to say I was not successful, because raspberry is actually an amazing plant for women, specifically raspberry leaves. So there are many types of raspberries which look very similar. Any of them are great to use medicinally. Specifically, red raspberry is the most medicinal when it comes to using for women's health, but all of them have medicinal qualities and are edible. So if you can't tell the difference, as long as you know that it is some type of either blackberry or raspberry, you will be totally safe to use it. When it comes to identifying raspberry, one of the first things you're going to look for are a very prickly plant with little thorns on the stem. Usually the stem has an orangish, reddish color, though I wouldn't recommend using the color of any part of the plant to identify it, because there's so much variety depending on the conditions that they're growing in, as well as just different variations within the species itself. And what you're looking for is a serrated leaf with 3 leaflets. And by serration, what I mean are these little teeth on the edges of the leaves. I failed to mention in that recording that the leaves can actually hold 3 to 7 leaflets, depending on the variety. Here are some examples of leaves with 5 leaflets. You may hear about many other types of wild edible berries like dewberry, blackberry, and many more. These plants are all members of the rubus genus, and they can very easily hybridize with one another, making it even more of a challenge to identify distinct species. There are hundreds of raspberry species around the world. So we're all familiar with the fact that you can eat the berries of blackberries and raspberries. Well, you can also use the leaves. So the leaves have a wonderful range of medicinal qualities. The leaves are high in different minerals that help to support bone health, like manganese, iron, and calcium. And the leaves also are an astringent. And this astringent in particular helps to tone the uterus. So when taking raspberry before and during your menstrual cycle, it can help to reduce the experience of cramping, and it can even help to shorten your periods, which I have found to be true for myself. I love using raspberry leaf tea anytime my moon time is coming up. Since I started using raspberry leaf tea regularly, I have not experienced very intense cramps for a very long time, for about a year now. So this plant is very common in North America, though you can find it all around the world. In Maine, I've noticed that it appears in areas of disturbance. So I am going to harvest this raspberry leaf, and just a good practice for harvesting. If you notice that an area is prolific, you can start there. But if there's not a lot of raspberry where you plan to harvest, just take a few leaves from each plant, making sure that you leave at least 50% of the foliage behind, so that plant can recover from the harvesting and continue to grow and spread and provide us with more raspberry for the future. Another characteristic of raspberry leaf is the coloration of the top and underside of the leaves. The top of the leaves will be green, while the underside is usually white or silvery. Herbalists sing much praise for raspberry for women's health. In truth, raspberry leaf is beneficial for all because of its highly nutritive qualities. It is an excellent source of vitamins and minerals, and a great source of sylvestrols, a class of chemicals that some cancer research groups recommend we incorporate into our diet. So we're going to try something today that I have not tried before, which is a side-by-side comparison of dried raspberry leaf and fresh raspberry leaf, and see if there are any differences in the flavor. This is last year's harvest of raspberry leaf. Fortunately, the raspberry is growing outside now, so I'm quickly replenishing my supply. And here is the fresh raspberry leaves that I just harvested today. I have a tea kettle full of very hot, recently boiled water and 2 tea mugs. I absolutely love this loose leaf tea basket. So it comes with this basket here with the 2 wings on the side so that it can set on top of any cup that you add it to, as well as a cover. So I like to use this cover to keep the heat in the tea as it steeps if I'm making something that needs to steep for longer. You can then set this on the table, and this basket sits very nicely on top of that cover so that when you remove the basket from your tea, you don't have to set something that's wet and soggy right down on any surface. And it's very clean and neat and well designed, and my husband and I find this very convenient for drinking loose leaf teas. So yeah, we're gonna fill these 2 baskets. One will be our dried raspberry leaf and the other will be our fresh raspberry leaf. Raspberry leaf's high iron content can be used to support those who struggle with anemia. Its astringent and antiviral properties also make it useful for ulcerative conditions in the mouth and digestive system. The leaf is commonly used for conditions like diarrhea. If you want to store your leaf for later use, raspberry leaf dries well and easily. I've done this a few ways. Last year, I used an electric tabletop food dehydrator. I simply washed the leaves, laid them out, and set the dehydrator to 105 degrees Fahrenheit. However, this dehydrator broke in the first year and it was quite expensive, so instead of buying a new one, I've gone back to the basics and now use a mesh tower. This method works quite well and simply requires a bit more patience in that you control the humidity within your home. It is also a much more cheap and energy efficient method. Again, this plant is highly nutritive and can be added to your diet to simply help your body get any vitamins and minerals you may be lacking in your diet. So I think we're ready to try this out. This is the dried raspberry leaf. I would say this tea has a very distinctly tart flavor to it. It has almost like a bite to it. You can feel it on your tongue. You can feel the kind of the astringency of it, almost like you would experience if you like bit into a lemon. It's very subtle. It's not as strong or as sour as a lemon, but it definitely has that little bite on your tongue. So I would say just a general sourness to it, similar to what you might experience eating the berry, but without the sweetness. Now let's try some fresh raspberry leaf tea. Fresh raspberry leaf definitely has a more distinct grassy flavor. It's again mild. It doesn't taste like grass, I promise, and it's not bitter. It does still have a little bit of that tartness, but it's more subtle. I don't know if it's a combination of the freshness of the flavor, that slightly grassy flavor, or if it's something else, but I will say that this tea is just ever so slightly sweeter than your dried raspberry leaf. I feel like I'm getting more of the astringency out of the dried raspberry leaf, or at least definitely more of the tartness. Whereas with this fresher tea, it's a subtler, sweeter, more mild flavor that I find quite enjoyable. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to click the like button and consider subscribing to the channel to help us grow and reach more folks looking to empower themselves through herbal medicine. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.